Okay, is everybody ready?
Yes.
Okay, so yesterday we started to talk about fairy tales. And we started to talk about common characteristics that a lot of fairy tales have. Does anybody remember some of those common characteristics found? Not in all fairy tales, but in a lot of them. Cassidy? Cinderella is an example of a fairy tale. Listen careful to my question. Some of the things that are common in a lot of fairy tales. I didn't ask for names of fairy tales, okay? Connor?
There's usually a bad guy.
Usually a bad guy, right? Didn't we say the word evil?
Yeah.
Right? Now, Cassidy, do you understand the question? Okay, Cassidy.
Heroes.
There's a hero. Angelina?
Good people.
Bless you. A good person, yes. Shania? Princesses. What else besides princesses? Evie?
Prince.
A prince or a princess or a king or a queen. If you look up on the screen, we call that royalty, right? Right, Kiara? Anything to do with royalty is a king or a queen or a prince or a princess. What else, Jordan? Phineas and Ferb is not a fairy tale, but yes, there are bad guys in fairy tales. Jackie?
I just got a book in my book bag that's a fairy tale.
Okay, that's great for sharing that, but right now we're talking about some of the common characteristics that we discussed yesterday. Carissa? What do you mean lots of decorations? David, are you with us? Castles, but what do you mean by decorations? Do you mean the actual books have a lot of these things? What do we call them?
Oh, pictures?
Yeah, pictures or illustrations. Yeah, the good ones, the ones that we like as kids, those have a lot of illustrations. Okay, one more. Carolyn.
Sometimes it starts with Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, a lot of times it starts with Once Upon a Time. So look up on the screen and let's make sure that we've covered everything. We talked about evil. We talked about Once Upon a Time. Did we mention magic?
Yes.
We mentioned royalty. We forgot a couple that were up there. We're not calling out, Nicholas. I know you want to participate. We really have to get in the habit of working as a team and raising our hand. Jealousy. Lots of times the bad person's jealous of the good character. And then the last one, the character transformed into something better. I put better in quotation marks because it might not always be better, but the character thinks it's something better. Speaking of that particular common characteristic, I'm going to read today my favorite. It's called The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, yesterday.
Raise your hand if you have heard the story or have seen the movie or know the story of The Little Mermaid. Okay. So even though, Giselle, you have no idea anything about The Little Mermaid, okay, so it's the first time for you. So even though, Jordan, most of you know the story, today you're going to be listening for an extra special purpose. Because I'm going to ask you to work with your Turn and Talk partners and check off on a list of the common characteristics that we talked about that's found in this particular book. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So let me begin. Unfortunately, I would like for this to be a bigger copy so you could see the illustrations, but I'll try to come up closer and let you see them. It's just such a good version of what I wanted to read to you that it has to be smaller, but that's okay. Can everybody say? Is everybody comfortable in their spots?
No. Not me. You look not me. Not me. I can't. I'm going to go get my...
Deep beneath the ocean, in a magical, watery world, there lived a little mermaid. Although she was very happy under the sea, the little mermaid loved to explore and often swam to the surface, even though her father had told her not to. What do we know about Ariel from The Little Mermaid? Don't raise your hand yet because I'm not done with the question. What does she love more than anything? Really think back to the story. What does she want? What does she love? What is she like obsessed with? What is she always thinking about? Lyra? I didn't hear what you said. Her prized possessions, what are they? Knickknacks. Where do they all come from? Yeah, exactly, Lyra. She has all these prized possessions, and she gets them from above
the water.
above the water, right? Jordan?
And she likes the king, that's why she goes on the sea.
Well, it's a prince, but we're not talking about her being in love, which is a very common theme in fairy tales. She's really into things that have to do with above, with humans, with legs, right? So think about that. It's important.
And then she got
Elijah, are you ready to listen? You sure? One stormy day, the Little Mermaid swam up to watch the waves splashing against the rocks. She loved the thundery gray clouds and the fresh drops of rainwater that fell upon her face. As she watched from behind a rock, she noticed a ship that was struggling to stay afloat in the stormy waters. This is another example of what we were just discussing. She swam up to watch the waves and the rocks, and she loved the clouds and the fresh drops of rainwater. All of those things had to do with her obsession with things above the water. Whoosh! A huge wave hit the ship and sent it crashing against the rocks. The Little Mermaid watched helplessly as the fine vessel began to sink. As the passengers and crew scrambled into the lifeboats, the Little Mermaid noticed one very handsome man who was unconscious in the water. Although it was forbidden to be seen by humans, she swam over to him and took him safely to the shore.